The Mask of Darkness is the brand new DLC for the tragically underrated Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I loved The Lost Crown, so I bought the DLC and played it. What I think? Well, I'm somewhat conflicted. On the one hand, the DLC offers a curious backstory to a previously unexplored member of the Immortals, Rajan. It boasts a hearty array of tough-as-nails but equally satisfying platforming challenges, some fun new enemy types, new amulets, and some beautifully realized new areas to explore. On the other hand, it's hindered greatly in my mind by a frustrating decision to strip the player of their abilities, is home to some seriously annoying bugs on Switch, and is disappointingly sparse in the boss department. Let's get the bitching out of the way first.
All you do is whinge and complain!
Because I really hate saying anything critical about what has been my favorite game of 2024. I mentioned a frustrating decision to strip the player of their abilities. Why don't we start there? You know that thing that all Metroidvania series do when you begin a brand new entry? You start out all powered up, but because this is a new game, there's always some convenient reason why you lose all of your abilities in like the first 10 minutes of the game. I understand that trope. I accept that trope. I even agree with that trope.
Do you? Yes.
Elsewise, how can the game take all the time it needs to make us feel like we're meaningfully progressing? You know what I don't agree with? Doing that in a DLC for a game that's been out for 8 months. Mask of Darkness removes all of your progression except for the dash and the Shadow of the Simurgh ability. And I mean all of it. It's not just your Simurgh powers, amulets, health potions, and life upgrades go bye-bye as well. I think that's stupid. I understand that they wanted to make the DLC accessible for players at a reasonably early stage in the game, but the game has been out for nigh on a year, has seen multiple sales across all of its release platforms, and has also had plenty of time to be evangelized by the glowing word-of-mouth reputation that it's earned. Most people who wanted to play this game have played it by now. The DLC should not, in my opinion, feel like an early game side quest. What it should have done is expand in meaningful ways on the full suite of abilities and powers available to the player at endgame. The platforming challenges within the DLC are difficult and fun, but the difficulty is artificially raised because the developers yoinked the abilities that most of us had grown accustomed to having. If they had been designed with Sargon's full complement in mind, I think they could have been even more satisfying. Bitch number 2. A conspicuous shortage of boss fights. I've amended this script since learning that there's a secret boss included in the DLC, but since I don't really know how to tell you how to get access to the boss without spoiling who the boss is, I'm including the footage here because I don't want anyone watching this video to miss out on it. If you complete all of Artaban's combat lessons in the Haven, you can challenge him to a duel, so he's the third boss. But, not including Artaban, there are only 2 bosses that bookend the DLC. You fight a tougher, nastier, very much less demure version of General Uvishka at the beginning, and you fight Rajan at the very end. I don't think that's much of a spoiler, by the way, given that the DLC tells you that you're after Rajan from the start, so it should come as no surprise that you're going to fight her at some point. The fight is really awesome as well, but more on that later. The boss fights in the base game were my favorite part of The Lost Crown, and I was disappointed that there were only really 2 of them in the Mask of Darkness. Final bitch, the performance on Switch has remained troublesome. I was getting some bad frame drops here and there, and while it was infrequent enough to not piss me off, it was still something I was discouraged to see, especially since I've had people telling me in the comments of my original review that the Switch performance issues had long since been fixed. Well, I guess Ubisoft need to spend some more time on QA because I was still noticing issues. But I went from being a little annoyed to downright irate when the game began consistently freezing on me as I attempted to clear this combat room. It froze on me probably 5 times before I finally managed to beat it, and it had frozen another 2 times before that in different areas of the map. I seriously don't understand how this wasn't caught in development, because unless it's due to my Switch being defective or some shit, this bug is not that hard to reproduce. All you have to do is die a few times during this section, and eventually, it'll freeze on you. Plus, it's not that hard to die when you're playing on the highest difficulty like I was, especially now that you only have 3 potions and maybe a third of your full endgame health. Those qualms aside, I really liked the DLC's content. The maps are beautiful and feel unique amongst the other areas in the base game. The new enemy types are a fun new challenge, especially these shadowy guys, and the story enriches the fuller narrative of the game as well. The platforming is just what the doctor ordered, once you get past the fact that you're not going to have the rest of your abilities. Many of these sections require near perfect reaction time and perfect sequences of button presses to clear. It's never overly punishing when you fail, but it's just punishing enough to make it really exciting when you finally get past a particularly hairy challenge. Also, Almost all of these sections demand that you use your noodle to figure out how to progress with the powers you do have, and that's really neat. At the end of the day, platforming is the bread and butter upon which the Prince of Persia sandwich has historically been based. Here lies their legacy, and here lies the focus with the Mask of Darkness. It's a fitting point of strength for a DLC in this legendary series. The final boss is also really cool. It's cinematic like all the rest in the game, but Rajan is so fast and relentless that it really felt like I was fighting a protege of Varum. It's worth noting that by this point I had accepted that I wasn't getting my powers back, so that didn't really frustrate me. That said, I'm sticking to my guns on wishing things could have been a little different. How cool this boss could have been had she been designed around an endgame Sargon, I can only imagine. If I were to sum up my thoughts in brief, they would go like this. I think Ubisoft messed up stripping the player of most of their progression for this expansion. It also just occurred to me that the only way that you can fight Artaban in the Haven is if you've collected all the powers, since you need to finish all his combat challenges before the fight's even available. In other words, they knew we would eventually have all of our powers, and they designed a boss within this DLC around that fact, so why couldn't the rest of the DLC been designed the same? Thought number 2, I'm still annoyed about all the crashes on Switch. Thought number 3, this is a great time once you get past the fact that you're not keeping a majority of your abilities from the base game. Thought number 4, great art, great platforming, and 3 really fun bosses for $5 is a pretty good deal, my gripes notwithstanding. If you want to know if I think you should buy this, yes, I think you should. It's not setting you back much, and what you get for the price is around 5 to 8 hours, depending on your skill level, of solid Lost Crown content. If you want to know if it's worth buying the base game now if you haven't done it already, that's a big fat yes. And why haven't you bought this already? At the end of the day, I recommend this game to anyone and everyone for the simple reason that I want Ubisoft to get the message that there's a market for games not called Assassin's Creed and Far Cry. I also would not make this recommendation unless I thought the game was really good. And it is. It's really good. Same goes for the DLC. Anyways, let's come together and support this bitch. And maybe, just maybe, Ubisoft will stop shitting the bed all the way down to the frame and keep tossing us a couple of gems like this every year.